there. Now, we're delighted to now welcome to Inspiration Day our next panel of women solutionaries, including previous recipients of the Women Entrepreneurs Empowerment US SDG Challenge. And to guide us through this next inspiring session, I'm delighted to introduce our host, Elizabeth Course. Elizabeth is the founder of DISCOM. She is an event producer, facilitator, moderator, and host, specializing in cross-sector stakeholder management. And so over to you, Elizabeth.
Thank you so much, Tim. And what an incredible conversation to be party to just before as well. So it's wonderful to be here. Thank you to all my panelists that are also joining me today. And what a team or group of women solutionists I have for you today in this conversation. This is my third Inspiration Day, and it's just such a joy to be part of it. And I think what I love most about it is the fact that we can have the entire globe online at the same time. So in this session alone, we have got Tanzania, we have got Panama, we have got the UK, and we have got Iceland represented. So ladies, can I just bring you in and say hello before I introduce you? How are you feling?
Hello.
Excited.
I'm really excited about Sherlock Holmes telling us how to live on Earth.
I know. I would love to know, actually, if you can pop in the chat, if there is somebody, and maybe a new speaker to you. I mean, honestly, we've had some amazing leaders that many of us know, but is there somebody that is new to you that you've seen in a session up until today that you didn't know, or that you've discovered as a result of inspiration? Do pop it in the chat. So we also have, because we're here to talk about Female Founders Forum, and we are here to talk about ideas to impact. We've also got a little poll that we're going to drop in the chat as well to find out and share with our panelists to see if we have any other founders, female founders, aspiring founders, recovering founders. So do pop that in the chat. But ladies, let me come over to you, and I'm going to just give you a quick introduction, starting with you, Jessica, and then we'll make our way around, and then we're going to dive straight into some questions, and then we again would love some interaction with the audience. So please use the Q&A function, upvote the questions that you love, and then we'll make sure we have some time to ask our panelists those questions. So diving straight in. So Jessica believes that the climate finance gap in developing countries closes when three things happen. One, local talent designs the project. Blended finance is mobilized to fund them, and international, regional, and local institutions are coordinated to deliver them. She has got an incredible career and story, having studied all over the world, getting masters in Switzerland and Spain, and having spent 6 years as the Green Climate Fund, at the Green Climate Fund as the regional manager, Latin America and the Caribbean. She founded her business, SURECO and Partners, a Panama-based climate finance consultancy firm that mobilizes local talent, structures blended finance, and has helped unlock over $1 billion for Latin America and the Caribbean. And she is also the winner of the We Empower UN SDG Challenge 2025. So please, thank you so much for joining, Jessica. Over to you, Guðný Nielsen from Iceland, on a mission to direct climate finance towards one of the world's most powerful yet unknown climate solution, which is girls' education. You're an engineer by background, and you had a dream job at the Red Cross, which working across sustainable development in Eastern and South Africa, which is where you really saw firsthand, is it not, the impacts of climate change on girls. They were first to be put out of school. And in 2021, you founded Katla Carbon in Reykjavik, building a first of its kind methodology that quantifies the climate impact of girls' education programs so that NGOs can finally access climate finance for one of the most evidence-led, justice-driven climate action initiatives. So welcome, Guðný, to this conversation.
Thank you.
We have Diana, Managing Director of Millennium Engineers. You very much believe that climate solutions don't fail because there's a lack of technology, but because too often they are designed far away from the people who need them and use them. And that you really, in order to have scale, you've really been able to build with communities not for them. And that's definitely a theme we're going to come back to in this session. You started your business whilst you were still at university, when most of us are trying to figure out how to cook and where the lecture theatres are. You've spent the last decade turning clean energy ideas into practical systems that improve livelihoods, strengthen resilience, and occasionally challenge the assumption that rural means low tech. And I can't wait for our audience to hear a bit more about your work. So you're here to help us understand what it really takes to scale climate solutions in emerging markets, especially when we prioritize real opportunities and friction points. So welcome, Diana. And then finally, Dr. Gabrielle Walker. You're the co-founder and chief scientist of Curate. And you are very much a believer that what goes up must come down. You believe renewables is essential to a credible net zero future. You're a TED speaker, BBC presenter, former editor of Nature and New Scientist. You've authored 4 books, including a book called Antarctica, which is still on my reading list. And after having been part of 5 polar expeditions there, and she does have a great story that she might be able to share at some point in this conversation. And you're very much here to show us that by acting now, you can really have an outsized opportunity for a business and for the climate. So welcome, Gabrielle, and welcome to everybody. How does that sound, hearing and meeting each other on this conversation?
Very excited.
Very exciting.
Okay. Population to me actually when I'm talking about climate, and I always say that if I wasn't working on climate, I'd be working on girls' education. So it's brilliant that we're actually got the connection here. Look at that.
And so much of life comes up with serendipity like that. We have so many common threads and common themes. Now, obviously today we want to hear about your experience as a female founder, bringing these huge impact projects. What I'd really like to do first is to understand your relationship with entrepreneurship. Was this something that it's not for everybody? Was this something that was on the cards for you? Jessica, I'm going to come to you first. Yes, what brought you to this particular point in your life as an entrepreneur? You've been a founder for 5 years. So yeah, over to you, Jessica, and your journey and your feelings of entrepreneurship.
Thank you, Elizabeth. So very honestly, I never planned to become an entrepreneur, and it's a little bit harder than I thought, because I started my career in this kind of international finance world and then in the Green Climate Fund. And there is where I mainly realized, working with a lot of international institutions, UN agencies, World Banks, and others, this reality where many developing countries had climate priorities and talent and strong institutions, but the struggle to access to this type of climate finance internationally. So I realized that there was a missing piece that was not only, of course, there are ambitions and ideas, but it was how to mobilize the talent from developing countries to develop those ideas into projects and access to climate finance. So that is why I created SURECO and Partners, that the name comes from Sustainable Regional Consultants, to bridge that gap. So our mission is to connect this local talent in developing countries. We focus in Latin America and the Caribbean, from as well local institutions, and then how to access to this international climate finance to develop their own agendas. So that is why I started this small consultancy. Now we have mobilized over 500 consultants in our region in more than 25 projects across 33 countries. And as you said, mobilizing already over $1 billion in our region. So that's, in a nutshell, my story as an entrepreneur.
And I love it, because you're an accidental entrepreneur bringing $1 billion into a region. And this is where we're really talking about ideas to impact. Guðný, can I come to you next and see what your relationship to entrepreneurship is like?
Yeah, I think very similar to Jessica. It's I was, like you said, I was in my dream job with the Red Cross. And I was just constantly becoming more and more frustrated that we never had enough funding to do everything that needed to be done. decades worth of research had shown that girls' education is one of the most powerful climate solutions we have, but no climate finance was reaching this solution. And I waited and waited for someone else to connect the dots. And then I think eventually I just lost my patience, and I figured I'm an engineer by background, and I gathered a small group of scientists, and we just decided to see if we could do it ourselves. And so now, 6 years later, we are generating the first carbon credits of its kind, channeling climate finance to girls' education. And so I think maybe just I'm an accidental entrepreneur that became an entrepreneur out of frustration, I think.
The frustration piece, I think we can all, let's just pull up our sleeves and go in and do it ourselves, because it's not going to happen anywhere else. So no, thank you so much. And like you say, decades of research and the fact that those two things weren't linked. Diana, I know you're going to relate to a lot of these things. And of course, as a fellow engineer, tell us about your story. You started being an entrepreneur so early in your career. You probably haven't really known much else. Over to you.
Yes, thank you. I think when I started off, especially with Millennium Engineers, the aim was actually an NGO. So when I went to register an NGO, the registrar was like, no, you're too young for this, but we can register you as a small business. And so that threw me in. But my original aim was to actually help local communities get solutions, their energy solutions. When I was in university, I lived in the town area, city girl. And then I got a chance to visit the towns where they don't have zero electricity access. And then I was like, kids get to like put in candles at night. And I was like, really, I'm an engineer. Why shouldn't I thrive into this? And I can easily bring them very simple solutions that are less costful and things like that. So I started working with the government, and 10 years later, we have solved multiple energy problems across different sectors in the country. And now we're expanding across sub-Saharan Africa as well. So yeah.
I love it. And we are going to have time to find out a bit more, because that is my next question. I'm very keen to for each of you to share like a very tangible example of some of your work. But Gabrielle, I'd like to come to you finally, because you have had such a varied career and really came to entrepreneurship rather late on. But let us know what is that felt like, and how are you enjoying it right now?
So great question. In a way, it's fascinating to hear everyone else's journey, because Diana, my co-founder, Marta Kropinska, who is unbelievably brilliant, has an experience a bit more like yours. She founded her first company when she was 19. And when I met her, she'd already built and exited several companies and was working as a senior executive at Google, but getting restless and saying, I want to build something more. So she really characterized what I would have thought of as an entrepreneur. She's been that all her life. And I only co-founded Curate with her after having done lots of other things. And one of the reasons that I did it, it relates to the things that everyone else has said. It was a measure of frustration. I've been spending a lot of my time working with big companies at very senior level, CEOs of extremely big corporations, in some cases that they had, 2 billion customers. I thought, if I can help them change, I can help change the world. But it still wasn't enough. It needed something much more systemic. And at the same time, I saw this massive gap in carbon removal. I've been working on reducing emissions from climate change most of my life. And I saw this big gap that had been growing, and I've been saying someone should do something about that. And I suppose the entrepreneurial spirit is not just saying someone should do something, but saying, I'm going to do something. But I did realize that in a way, some of that entrepreneurial energy had been there all my life. When I was working with CEOs like Paul Polman when he was CEO of Unilever, or Ajay Banga when he was CEO of MasterCard, my role was to bring them in different ways of thinking, to see what wasn't there and try to imagine how it could be, but also to get very, very practical. So I think in a way, what I learned is that kind of entrepreneurial spirit. It's the same thing when I was writing my books. It's the same thing when I was going off on expeditions to Antarctica. It's imagining something into existence and then doing all the work to make it so. And it feels like that's the entrepreneurial spirit that I brought to this all along. So my co-founder, Marta, she says, you've always been an entrepreneur, you just didn't know it.
And I think it's such a good point. And I know we've shared a poll in about, you know, where people are in that journey of entrepreneurship, but the idea that you don't have to have the name founder and have set up a business to be entrepreneurial. And it is that idea of having that vision and something that we're moving towards. And especially what unites us here on this call is around the impact. So very, very good to remind us that entrepreneurialism exists in so many forms. If I can just stay with you, Gabrielle, and then I'll come around to everybody else as well. But I think it would be very helpful before we then dive more into your experience kind of as a female founder, could you give us a sense of like a tangible example of a type of project that your organization has been involved in? Because I think it's just, you know, it can be so ethereal otherwise. So if you know, you're obviously in the building carbon removals, but that's crossing across nature, tech, and hybrid. So over to you, Gabrielle, and then we'll come back to everybody else on this one as well.
Sure. So I think I became captivated by this whole area of carbon removals. You described it as what goes up must come down. And when I first encountered it, people seemed to think that it was a little bit of on the edge, a rounding error. When you've done everything else, then you need to do that. And so I began to get worried because I actually looked at the numbers. My PhD is in chemistry, and I've done a lot of work on climate science, but I know how to look at numbers. And I saw the number growing for the gap between how much we could now meaningfully reduce and what was left. And then I saw lots of papers, as the IPCC and others coming out saying the amount that we need now to remove is growing. This is a way it buys us time because we've left it too late. But also when we get to net zero, everything that goes up is going to have to come down to the tune of billions of tons. And then after that, my favorite reason for doing this, building the capacity to remove means that we'll actually be able to reverse climate change. Those are the three reasons that we have to do it. So in terms of a tangible example, the question is, how do we help people engage in this? We're all collectively need to build this capacity, but no one individually has the individual responsibility. It's a kind of classic issue of global commons, like who should pay, who should be responsible. And so we work with companies who they want to do the right thing on climate, but they also say we want to build the capability, build the industry we need to buy from. And some of them are starting to say we need to build the industry that we can also sell to. So this is going to be $1 trillion industry when it's built. And so, for example, we did some work with British Airways. So British Airways knows that carbon removals are essential for the future of aviation. There's fewer ways to decarbonize long-haul aviation than in any other industry almost. So you're going to need to balance everything you do in aviation with carbon removal. So they asked us to build an extremely diverse and also very innovative portfolio of different removals, from trees to biochar, this thing called enhanced rock weathering, direct air capture. They're all brilliant technologies, approaches. Some are more nature, some are more land-based, some are more machine-based. They wanted a range, and they wanted the most innovative ones so that they could show that they were engaging in making this entire industry grow. But they also helped us work with a finance institution, with Standard Chartered Bank, to do forward financing. So this way, British Airways doesn't need to pay up front, they pay on delivery, but the people building the solutions need the money now.
You need the money now, so yeah.
They promised us to buy, they're a AAA company. So once they promised to buy across this great range of portfolios, then Standard Chartered came in and said, okay, we will provide the debt, and we put all of it together to make it easy. So that's a good example where you can find a way to make it meaningful in a business point of view for British Airways. You can also bring in a range of different sectors, and at the end of it, everybody has some business reason to doing it, and so it sustains.
Thank you. And actually, I'd like to bring Diana and Jessica in onto this next bit, because one of the things that you both have seen is the impacts of having things happen to a community or to a region versus co-creating. So Diana, if I can come to you next and just understand like some of the impacts that you've done. I know you've done a lot of work on helping and supporting women in these rural communities in the fishing industry. Can you just give us a sense of the type, a project or something that you can, it's really tangible to share with us? And then we'll come to you, Jessica, before Guðný to finish off.
Yes. So, well, I went into this fishing industry. We discovered that one of the biggest problem was that this was a generational, let's say hundreds and hundreds of years where the industry had never experienced any innovations. From the fishing practices where they fish using petrol or diesel engine boats, while also using lightning systems that are powered by kerosene lamps, and then even further going into processing activities where they dry on open land spaces, like clearly on the ground. Now, why was this happening in the 21st century? This is because most of the developers bringing in technologies were creating away from those communities. But when we went in, we sat down with the communities, understood what was the problem. Why were they not moving from this lightning system to this lightning system? Why were they using petrol engine boats instead of using, let's say, hybrid ones? So we got to understand from their fears, their daily operations, the pain points that the technology developers always says, this is just nothing. Now, working with them for over a period of 3 years to develop a solution that they feel, no, this is ours. This is something that we wanted. It's exactly the same as what we used to use, but it's even better, bringing us more results. So even as we went into such a community and tried to transition these communities away from all this fossil fuel technologies across the value chain at different points of that value chain, we experienced a lot of backlash, not just from our government, from all the sectors that there was no financing. And then once those communities realized that what we were trying to solve and we're not getting any support, they started putting in the money. And then they started advocating for us. And before you know it, over a period of just 1 year, we got the government on our front line saying we want in, we got development organizations, and everyone was in, but we didn't mostly advocate. It was them saying, we're working with them, they're working differently. And we realized one most important aspect. Most people think that the ones affected by climate change do not know about it and do not understand the solutions they need. They do. They just need the right people to come in and blend in the new technologies, what they know, and try and find where the financing can flow and bring that harmony together. Yeah.
And I can see, Guðný, you are absolutely nodding your head away. Well, both of you, because of course, you know, we've got so many types of solutions represented in this conversation. But Guðný, if you can give us also, building on what Diana's just talked about, like your experience of the projects that you've been able to bring about, just to give us a real sense of what you're seeing on the ground.
Yeah, I was nodding and nodding and nodding. And my career, I was, you know, with the Red Cross and just working in, you know, development, cooperation. So much effort goes into kind of like thinking you need to teach and inform, and, you know, they already know what they need. And it's just, we're not funding what needs to be funded. And I feel for what Katla Carbon does is we are very simply being the link to more funding for an already scalable solution. So we have 120 million girls out of school around the world. We have NGOs and civil society actors in every single low and middle income country that are experts at getting these girls into school. And we just were not funding it. So when I realized what was standing in the way was just these NGOs are stretched. They're underfunded. They don't have the capacity to run large, you know, like in our case, a large micro simulation model that quantifies the future climate impact of raising girls' education levels. So that's the position that we took, to be that link to enable them to just do what they're already doing, what they are experts at. We're not, you know, dictating anything. We're just making sure that they can untap climate finance for the first time.
Yeah, and those numbers are just staggering, isn't it? When you hear 120 million girls out of school, and that we have all of this evidence that backs up the impacts that they have been having them in school will have, and yet the problem is the funding. Gabrielle, did you want to come back in and
You saw me nodding away. Yes. The thing that I didn't say, but I'm thrilled to hear this from both of you, Guðný and Diana, is that lots of the projects that I'm most excited about that we've been working on in the carbon removal space are not ones that you would necessarily think. People say, whenever I talk about this, do you mean trees or do you mean machines? And actually, most of the exciting projects lie somewhere in between, especially on land-based projects. So there's some fantastic ones in India that have quadrupled the income of rural women who are working on this stuff. And therefore, you know, because the money goes to the women, it goes to the whole family, and which has also therefore allowed them to start to educate their own daughters. And so it all kind of flows together. But I wanted to say too that this field that I'm working on, it subverts some of the cliches. So one of the best places in the world to do direct air capture, which is kind of the most technological of all of them, is in Kenya. And I spoke to this incredible young woman who's an engineer in Kenya who was working on carbon direct air capture. And she said to me, I was offered a job as an investment banker and my parents wanted to take it. But why would I do that when I can do this? I can build this solution that's building the jobs and saving my country. Why would I be an investment banker? So I think on all sides, I've seen this wonderful signs of building climate solutions that also bring livelihoods and energy and hope to women around the world.
And I think actually, Jessica, perfect timing, because we've just covered like I guess the transcendence or that nexus of that climate action happens in the communities. It benefits economically. Climate action then becomes so much more than climate action. It's all of the things at SURECO that you do on a day-to-day basis, which is resilient economies, etc. What have you seen in terms of some of the tangible projects that you have been able to support on the ground as part of this, the kind of investment that is happening on a more regional basis? Oh, can you not hear? Can you hear us okay, Jessica? No, not quite. No, don't worry. We'll try and fix the audio in just a moment. If in the meantime I can come back to you're all founding very different businesses. You're all, you know, some of you are at the kind of, as we say, decades of evidence, but no money. You could also say on the other end, we've got lots new potential and still probably not that much money. And as female founders, I'd love to hear a bit about your experience having been a female founder to date. So maybe if I don't think we're going to go to Jessica just yet, but Diana, if I can come back to you, what has been your experience? I know you've largely found it, well, you've been part of this We Empower program. You know some of the other women on this panel. What's been your experience as a female founder? Because we've heard before, like, as always, there's less money. We have to prove ourselves 3 times over. What's been your sense?
From my side, I would say from early on, starting off, I've actually received lots of support. And every person I went with, I was full of energy, like the problem I'm trying to solve. Really enthusiastic, and they were always very scared to turn me off because they felt I would bust. So most of them would actually help out or send me to someone they think. And I think 10 years ago in Tanzania, that we're talking about 2016, 2015, when I started off, the energy sector was very male dominated and very, how do I say, old generated. Like people are 45 above, and here you have a 19, 20-year-old looking at you saying, I want to solve the African energy problem. And they would look at me and like, oh, that's so cute. But that really helped me because from there, I started as an engineering student. I really didn't have a business background or project planning background, or how do I move from one place to another? So I was always asking. Back then, we didn't have ChatGPT, so I relied on Google, I relied on YouTube. I think I finished a lot of courses there, never got a certificate in reality, but along the way, I always met people that helped because they were always assured the person that took me to them always told them she delivers. When you give me an assignment, I come back with it. I tell you, I don't understand this, take me to the next person. So in reality, I ended up being a collection of a lot of mentors and coaches this one tells me this, I put in my words a bit, I tell this one, they become smarter, I take it to this one. So they kept building the business slowly. And in the terms of financing, there was really very little financing around climate change. It was very still a concept for all the people, and not us, not the youth, not the women. We were not involved in those conversations. And slowly, I've seen over the years how that has changed, and I'm really proud of it, of our country and the globe as well. But I still see that gap, that I am one, but I don't see 10 of me behind me. I am seeing very few coming in. 3 years down the line, they go down. And it's because of many factors. We cannot, a hungry person cannot run a business. And it takes a long journey for someone to actually get to profitability, especially across climate change and energy sector. So we still have to look at that gap, especially for women, because at a certain age, you would want to start family. There will be lots of things that come along. But at the same time, we need those voices. We need those solutions. So that is one of the areas I see as a gap on a global scale, that we are not financing these women to keep creating, keep doing what they do best. We are waiting for them to create, showcase, then finance. It doesn't work that way.
Yeah, and I think you're all testament to the ideas that wouldn't happen without, you know, the female founder perspective, you know, seeing the problems, you know, like you said, you weren't a rural person, you didn't know about the fishing industry, but you had that curiosity, that empathy to understand what they were dealing with and then fixing the problems that way. Now, Guðný, if I can come to you, because I mean, you are in, you know, I grew up learning about that incredible day of strikes that women went on in Iceland. You know, you are at the absolute center of a country that, in my mind, is prioritizing that gender equality. How has it been being a female founder in that? I guess in that reality, is it as good as we imagine it may to be?
I don't know about that. I mean, we like to boast that we're so, you know, we're the closest to any country in gender equality. Of course, we're far from perfect, but I think really, I mean, you bring up this day. I think we have a lot of legislation and processes now in place that kind of, you know, build under equality, but that's because society was just that day. It was made to realize the crucial part women play in societies. I mean, women didn't take care of the home. They didn't take care of their children. They went out on strike. They didn't go to the offices. The fathers needed to decide, am I going to take my kids to work or stay at home, you know, to take care of them and feed them? Hot dogs were sold out in the whole country that day. And I think truly the importance of this day kind of just made the society understand the importance of women. So there's no need to discuss that. So when Katla Carbon, when we were coming, not just as a woman with an idea, the idea was centered around girls.
Yes.
So, and I was saying girls are a crucial part of the solution to climate change. I didn't like that. Didn't seem radical to the people, to the investors or to the funders or, you know, research and development funds, you know, or corporate partners. It didn't seem radical. It was just, oh, that's logical. So I could get to the next stage of, you know, discussing how we wanted to do this. So I don't know if that was an answer to your question, but I feel like the society is just, you know, I encourage every woman in every country to do this strike because it catapulted us into, you know, way further.
I suppose that one of the things we'd love to know is, as a female founder, do you feel that you've had that additional support, the being in the location that you're in? And do you think is there anything specific that you've benefited from, or do you also struggle with that imbalance of you know, say VC funding or funding? Yeah, sorry, that imbalance.
I can't say that I've felt it. I mean, I know the data says
Yeah.
the data says it that it is, but I think, I mean, of course, not everything. I mean, I just felt like this. I think this is just such a brilliant idea that we were very fortunate. We got the first grant we asked for. We got all of our customers like engaged in the beginning, because I think this was just one of those ideas whose time has come.
Yeah,
but
yeah,
for
yeah.
sure. And we have legislation that, you know, on boards of public companies, we have regulation that says, you know, a certain, like with grants, public grants, it's more difficult than before to have just one gender on a team now. Now you have to have more of a diversity. So
Yeah.
I'm sure that those things help.
Yeah, and I think, Jessica, just to bring, there's a couple of questions I want to ask Jessica and then Gabrielle, which is that, you know, you have spent your lifetime kind of almost in whiplash between working in the financial institutions of the world, which, as we know, is very male dominated, but then you've got 500 consultants, incredible climate leaders around you that are very female. There's a lot of women. And I just wondered, how does that sit with you? What have you learned from both sides, of course, because this is not about polarizing. It's about making sure we're learning from both sides. So tell us a bit more about that experience as being a female founder.
Thank you, Elizabeth, and I apologize for the problems here. I'm in a mission in Ecuador, and the connection is not really good. So it's kind of really two worlds, no? This international and finance. So I started in the banking sector, in asset management, then I was a broker, then in a development bank, and it's largely male dominated, no? And now in this more climate and sustainability, I think there's a strong, at least in Latin America and the Caribbean, female leadership. So finding this kind of facing in each of these worlds needs kind of a particular attention, because I have to always be positive, and I take the good side of both. No, so in the finance is kind of really focused on discipline, scaling, rentability, profits, no, and people are really trained about this kind of issues of risks, accountability, how to move capital in an efficient way, how do we focus in results. In the other hand, climate, it's more often on collaboration, system thinking, long-term impact, and many of the women leaders that work side by side with me are really thinking about how to more engage with communities, with different stakeholders, how to listen, understanding, and bringing this kind of people-oriented. No, so I think that these two worlds have to be combined in a way, and that's why I'm an expert in climate finance, no, on how to bring these programs and capacities and connecting people and making projects scalable and sustainable. So I think that's kind of my take on the two world sides. And at least in Latin America, I don't have kind of Guðný's fortune. Being a female entrepreneur, it's harder. So all my start was with my savings. No, I even knocked on the door of my family. They were like, "You're crazy," you know, being a woman entrepreneur in Latin America in this finance world dominated by male. But I think that hard things make you stronger. And now after 5 years, really, I realized that it was worth it taking this decision. And that's the reason why I engage and I hire mainly women and young professionals. So a little bit like Diana, we have trained over 60 interns in SURECO in projects, and then they scale to other worlds, or they stay with SURECO. But it has not been easy, but I think it's really worth it.
Well, we're definitely seeing a theme with all of you ladies, which is absolutely my favorite word, perseverance. You know, that perseverance and resilience. Now, you are at Curate, Gabrielle, a startup. You are very well funded, very well backed. But I know you've actually managed to find yourself with what we call a she-suite, or what you call a she-suite. So you've managed not only to get, you know, funding into a startup, which is already hard, but then you've even managed to get a she-suite. So tell us a bit more how that's even been possible. And then, yeah, we'll have to wrap up. So
yeah, so I coined this term. I realized that all of us, my senior leadership in Curate are all women. So my co-founder Marta is the CEO. I'm the chief scientist, and we also have a chief operating officer. So that's what I'm calling the she-suite. complete coincidence. It was simply and straightforwardly who were the brilliant people that we wanted to work with. But on top of that, we have an all-female board. So our first, we're venture-backed, and our first round was led by Google Ventures. And so a very brilliant woman from Google Ventures came in and joined our board for that. And we also have an observer from another of our investors, which is Capital T. And then we did another round, and I said to Marta, we're raising our seed round. I said, can you find me a woman for the board? And she said, Gabrielle, the capital markets are challenging enough without laying extra conditions on this. But let me see what I can do. And of course, they were very challenging. The raising the seed round was extremely hard in climate tech at a time like this. But we found Airbus Ventures, who led our round. And there were 5 partners in Airbus Ventures. They decided they wanted to lead the round, and 4 of them were men and 1 was a woman. And she said, I am going on that board. She'd come to London and had dinner with me and Marta. She'd probed us, she'd tested us. We told her the truth. We were straightforward. She met our customers and everything. She said, I'm going on that board. So we're still an all-female board, and we have a she-suite. So we started looking into this. I have to tell you this bit. We started doing women in climate dinners in London. So just bringing together some of the many brilliant women we found working in this space. And if any of you are in London, we're starting to do them in other places as well. If any of you are a brilliant climate woman in London, then let us know, and you can come to one of these things. They're fantastic. And at one of the women said, I don't ask for permission, I just do it. And one of the other women said, yeah, it's better to ask for forgiveness to ask for permission. And she said, why would I ask for forgiveness? I don't do that either. I don't ask for permission. I don't ask for forgiveness. I just do it. And that is how I would characterize the she-suite, the female board, the dinners. It's not asking for forgiveness. It's not asking for permission. It's just doing it. And that's what I've encountered in this amazing all-female leadership. It's fantastic.
And we have many aspiring founders on this call. So very, very last, we've got 30 seconds each, if that. One thing that you would like the audience on this call to do once they shut off of Inspiration Day. Diane, I'm going to come to you. One ask, thing, challenge, or thing to go on to do after this.
For my side, I will say dare to dream and dare to do it.
Dare to dream, dare to do it. Brilliant. Guðný, over to you.
Girls are part of the solution.
Yeah, no, brilliant. Girl, I mean, this is the most effective end panel question I've ever had. Jessica, over to you.
No, I would like people to stop thinking that developing countries are just kind of beneficiaries, no? And start seeing them as partners, innovators, and really part of the solution.
Thank you, Jessica. And Gabrielle, over to you.
So I would say that climate issues are not going away, even if attention seems to be going away from them. They're growing, but the potential for climate solutions is also growing. And I have to say, this is the most exciting thing I have ever touched. This building is so hard, but it's so exciting. So I would say, don't ask for permission, don't ask for forgiveness, just do it.
Thank you so, so much. Our incredible female founders from ideas to impact. And thank you also to the team at RELX for making this day and this conversation possible. Back over you to Tim, and enjoy the rest of the day, everybody. What a great, great session and a great event.